Here we're going to solve, graph, and write the solution in interval notation. And these kind of situations here are not equations, but we call them inequalities because we have this inequality symbol of less than or greater than, and so on. Though we solve them much like we do regular equations. So let's look at the first example, 2 times 3 minus 5x less than or equal to 16. The first thing I'm going to do here is distribute into the parentheses. Once we do that, we're going to have 6 minus 10x is less than or equal to 16. And now we want to isolate x by itself just like we would if we're trying to solve for x in a regular equation. So I'm going to start off here by subtracting 6 from both sides, giving us negative 10x is less than or equal to 10. And to be able to isolate x, we need to divide both sides by negative 10. Alright, and if we do that, here's the thing that's special about inequalities that we have to watch out for. In this case, we're dividing by negative 10. So if we divide by a negative, as we're doing here, we have to flip the direction of the sign in the middle from less than to greater than. So what that means is once we divide by negative 10, it goes away here. We have x, but we're going to say greater than or equal to 10 divided by negative 10 is negative 1. And so that's the thing to watch out for when dividing by a negative. We have to flip the direction of that sign. And so that's now our solution for x greater than or equal to negative 1. What we're going to do with that information is to graph it on a number line to indicate what the solution looks like on a number line. So to do this, we're going to use something called interval notation. And in interval notation, if you have a greater than or equal to or less than or equal to, you're going to use brackets around the numbers on the number line. So here I'm going to put a bracket somewhere on the number line indicating that that's at the location of negative 1. And since this is heading to the greater than, it's pointing to the right. So I'm going to shade in the number line on the right side to indicate that the solution is heading in this direction. And so once we do that, we're then going to write the interval notation for the number line, which is going to be a bracket and then negative 1, comma, and then what's going off here on the right side is infinity, and we always close up infinity with a parenthesis. Let's look at another example here. This one's going to use a greater than. 3x plus 11 greater than 6x plus 8. The first thing I'm going to do is, like before, I need to isolate the x on one side. So I'm going to start by subtracting 6x from both sides. That's going to give me negative 3x plus 11 greater than 8. And then we're going to subtract 11 from both sides, giving us negative 3x is greater than negative 3. Then we have to divide both sides by negative 3. And when we divide by the negative, we have to flip the direction of the sign. So it's going to turn into a less than, x less than positive 1. So like in the last example, that's the solution. Now we're going to graph it and write it in interval notation. Now for symbols like less than or greater than, we're going to use parentheses on the number line and an interval notation. So here we're going to indicate that this is the location for 1, and I'm going to write a parenthesis there. Since this is pointing toward the left with less than, I'm going to shade in and indicate that everything here is on the left side of the number line, heading toward negative infinity. When I write this in interval notation, I start with negative infinity since it's on the left, and then I'm going to put comma 1, and both of those are going to get enclosed in parentheses. On this example, we have two inequality symbols. Then we're going to try to solve for x. So this is very much like the other examples where we're trying to get x by itself. We're trying to isolate it. But in this case, we're going to be isolating x right down here in the middle, moving everything away from it, leaving just an x. So to do that, I can start by subtracting 4. But unlike a regular equation, I have to subtract this from all the particular sides, both on the left and the right, and in the middle. So when I do that, subtracting 4 from negative 2, we get negative 6, less than 2x in the middle, less than 2 minus 4, negative 2. So again, we're trying to get that x down here by itself in the middle. What I do next is divide by 2, but I'm going to divide now toward the left and the right by the 2. Getting rid of the 2 in front of the x, leaving us with just x in the middle, and then negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So that leaves us with negative 3 less than x less than negative 1. And that's the solution, which we're now going to visualize and graph on the number line and write an interval notation. Since these are less than symbols, we use parentheses, but we got two numbers here. We got a negative 3 and a negative 1. So I'm going to put marks on the number line for those numbers. X is in the middle between the two. So I'm going to put these parentheses here opening up toward each other and shade the region in the middle between the two to indicate that's where our solution is, between the two numbers negative 3 and negative 1. And then in interval notation, it looks almost the same. We put parenthesis, negative 3, comma, negative 1, close parenthesis.